What's going on, Packers fans? Happy Victory Monday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Appreciate you joining me today on this Victory Monday. Packers win 27-18, move to 3-1-1 on the season. And yeah, it was an interesting game. We'll break it all down. First of all, had a blast going to the game, got to enjoy the game in the stands. Always wonderful being at Lambeau Field, surrounded by, 80,000 Packers fans. That was a ton of fun. I know it maybe wasn't the exact outcome that we were maybe hoping for, maybe a little bit more of a dominant performance. We'll go through all of that today. Had the opportunity, obviously, not only to go to the game, but rewatch it, get all my notes together and everything like that to bring you today's show. So excited to dive into all of it. And yeah, this is what we kind of talked about all week long, right? There was no winning in this game. They won 31-0. Would have felt good, but the immediate that's the Bengals. Who cares? They suck anyway. It doesn't really matter or whatever, right? Would have been better. I would have certainly taken that outcome, but that would have been the overarching response. So let's see them do it against a good team, right? And if they win by, 14 points, whatever the line ended up being at the end, all right, fine, that's good. They covered or whatever. If they win by 9, two scores, right? It was never really in the balance, but that wasn't good enough. You needed to win by more. You needed more style points in this game. If they would have lost, it would have been, world on fire. Everyone's in a panic. And everyone's calling for LaFleur and everything else. So this is just one of those games where it felt like there was never going to be a great outcome one way or the other. This was probably somewhere in the middle, right? You would have ideally liked it to be a little less competitive, and you would have ideally, not wanted, of course, anything worse than this. But it's a 2-score victory in the end, and we'll break down why it didn't feel better than that in just a moment. Before we get there, shout out to Alchemy Wealth Management for supporting today's show. You can find them retirewithryan.net. Make sure to get your finances in your financial future in order. Free consultation, super easy to do. Go to retirewithryan.net, click on the availability, and you can schedule that free consultation. You can get this thing done this week and start having that future that you want ready because you work with Ryan. So check that out, retirewithryan.net, and of course, Alchemy Wealth Management. Also want to shout out our brand new Pack-A-Day Podcast YouTube members, Venus, Quinn Sanders, and Maddox Ambrosini, and also our new Pack-A-Day Podcast Hall of Fame member, Les Nenow. Les, thank you so much, and all of you appreciate checking out those memberships and signing up. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to do so. Also, if you have the opportunity, like, subscribe, comment, and give those 5-star reviews as well. So the game was meh. All right. It was meh. Why was it meh? Why did it not maybe go a little bit better in the way that we were kind of hoping for, with a more dominant performance and getting a few more of those style points against the Cincinnati Bengals? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. Turnovers and lack thereof. Green Bay had 1 turnover in this game. Jordan Love, a bad decision, which led to an interception early in the game and took points off the board. And they were not able to generate any turnovers of their own. That's the story of why this game didn't feel as good. The Packers now have a -1 turnover differential on the season and have still only generated 2 turnovers in total. That's not good enough. And one of those turnovers, as we talked about, was the arm punt by Joe Flacco right before halftime to Xavier McKinney. They've generated 1 turnover, 1 true legitimate turnover, which was an Evan Williams pick against Detroit in week 1 of the season. They haven't generated any real true ones since then. That's going to be a problem. If you continue to not have those negative plays and those turnovers, and by negative plays, I mean sacks and disruptive plays, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, etc., it's going to be difficult to win big and blow anybody out. That's what's lacking on this team right now, is the turnover differential. And if you have a -1 turnover differential, more often than not, that's just going to be a loss or a very close game. And so for Green Bay to win by 2 scores and have this one never really be in the balance, despite losing the turnover battle 1-0, it shows you what this could be if they just started actually winning the turnover battle. And it does so many different things for you. It obviously gets your defense off the field, right? So that you don't have to have these long extended drives. A big turnover gets them off the field quicker. And it usually sets your offense up in plus position, and or takes points off the board from the opposition, which again gives you more opportunity to extend that score and give yourself a better opportunity to maybe run away with a game here or there. Part of this is good news, right? They're -1 in turnovers on the season, and they're 3-1-1. That's not the worst thing in the world, all things considered. It is a big problem, though, if this is who they are. If they cannot actually generate turnovers, then we're going to continue to see games that are either losses, like the game against Cleveland, ties, like the game against Dallas, or just much closer than we want them to be. If you look at this game, right? If you look at where everything was at in this game outside of the turnover battle, you look at everything and it doesn't, it feels, right? When you're watching it, everything's kind of where you want it to be. Green Bay had 60 plays for 409 yards. Cincinnati had 62 plays for 268. That is a massive difference. 6.8 yards per play for Green Bay. And again, over 400 total yards. Cincinnati only 4.3 yards per play. Green Bay outpassed Cincinnati by 43 yards in this game, outrushed them by almost 100 yards in this game. Turnovers were not a major storyline whatsoever. Green Bay dominated time of possession. Joe Flacco had 219 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's a solid performance, but only a 4.9 yard average, had to throw 45 times in this game. Their rushing attack only had 55 total yards on 16 carries, a 3.4 yard average. You held Jamar Chase under 100 yards. You held T. Higgins under 70 yards. Their defense only had 1 sack on the day. The difference here, and the special teams was not a story either. If you look at all of the different stats, the things that would generally indicate whether you're doing well in this game or not, Green Bay did totally fine. They basically did exactly what you would expect and want them to do outside of the turnover situation. So 27-18, all right, didn't win the style points, got you a victory, won by 2 scores, was never in doubt, was always in hand for Green Bay, yet didn't feel great. The reason that is because they haven't been able to generate those turnovers and have turned over the ball. Not much, right? Not a ton, but it's an interception that took points off the board. That's why this game felt gross. Didn't feel the way that you wanted it to feel. If everything else goes according to plan, it probably feels like a victory that would have been, what you expected in a 14.5 point favorite game. But that turnover battle completely kind of ruins what would have otherwise been a dominant performance. And if you also look at it this way too, 27 points, it's fine, right? 18 points allowed is fine. In any NFL game, you score 27, you're probably going to win. If you allow only 18, you're most likely going to win. Like, those are both fine performances. But what did we want to see, right? My prediction for the game was 27-13, somewhere in that range. You would have liked to have seen them hold Cincinnati maybe under 17 points, maybe 13-14, right? And you would have liked to have seen Green Bay score 30-some points. Well, there's 2 things that happen here. Green Bay takes 3 points off the board with the interception early in the game. That would have got them to 30+. And again, probably makes it feel a little bit better offensively. And the 2 plays by Joe Flacco on 4th down. The Bengals have 2 4th down plays on both of their touchdown drives. And on both of those plays, they result in touchdowns. If you can just take one of those and get the turnover on downs, you probably hold them to 10 points on the day. And if you can stop them on both, you hold them maybe to 3 or 6 or whatever it ends up being, right? So that is a lot different performance overall. It's just a handful of plays. And that's where we are again in the margin of difference in the NFL. That's where it comes down to. You turn over the ball, take 3 points off the board. Otherwise, you have a 30+ point performance on the day. And your inability to get off the field on 2 4th down plays and not get turnovers yourself makes it that they have 18 points instead of what probably should have been 10, 3, 6, somewhere in that range, right? That's the difference in this game. If you look at, again, all of the other stats that go into this one, if I would have showed you all the stats again outside of the turnover one, you probably look at it and say, yeah, I bet Green Bay won by at least 14 points, 16 points, somewhere in that range. But the difference was the 2 4th down conversions, Green Bay not being able to get off the field on those, and then the missed opportunity with the interception, taking points off the board there, and the turnover difference. That's why this game was closer than it should have been. So when I went back and rewatched this game, obviously I had, again, the opportunity to watch it live and in person. But then when I rewatched it, I was expecting to kind of feel like, like they really did not play the way that you wanted them to. And I didn't feel that way. There was frustrating moments in the second half defensively, and we'll talk about that you just wanted to see a little bit better defensive performance. And in the first half offensively, only putting up 10 points. Again, I think the interception, taking points off the board, really hurt them there. There was also the one other drive that ended in a punt that they had a big positive play right before halftime, and I thought they could have had some point production there too, and unfortunately just didn't end up working out that way. But overall, I felt like the offense was effective. I felt like the defense, especially in the first half, was completely shut down. And then, the Bengals were able to put some drives together in the second half, which again, I think if anything, that's probably the frustrating aspect of this. But I didn't see a awful or even bad performance from Green Bay. Just didn't get the turnovers that you would have really liked to have made this a much easier performance for the Packers. And again, if that's going to be an issue for them moving forward, if that's going to be a problem where they can't legitimately force turnovers and they continue to have some of their own, that's a deal breaker for this team. That's going to always hold them back. So that's going to have to be the 1A thing for this team moving forward, is that they have to do a much better job of generating turnovers. And then, of course, taking advantage of them when they get them and not turning the ball over on their own. That's the whole story for me in this game. If you wanted to boil everything down into the lowest common denominator into simplest possible terms, -1 in the turnover battle made this closer than it should have been. Let's get into our Luigi's Pizza player of the game. I thought going into this, I was going to give it to Matthew Golden, who is deserving of it, in my opinion, or maybe even Lucas Havrisik, who we'll talk about as well. But when I went back and rewatched this game and looked at the box score as well, it just has to be Josh Jacobs, right? 18 carries, 93 yards, 5.2 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns, a 5.2 again yard average on the ground with an 11.4 yard average in the air with 5 catches for 57 yards. In total, 23 touches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. And apparently he was ill for the game as well, vomiting and throwing up before the game, during the game, and still put up 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. I thought this was one offensively where he said, hey, kind of put this on my back a little bit, and I got you guys. It was great to see him running physical, running strong. I thought the offensive line and run blocking was a little bit better to help him get to that 5.2 yard average on the ground. But I thought overall, Josh Jacobs was fantastic. So he is my Luigi's Pizza player of the game. Shout out to Luigi's for sponsoring today's show. A great day to get a victory pizza. Check out your grocer's freezer aisle for all those different varieties, whether it's the fresh dough, the ultra thin crust, the garlic dippers, the Big Daddy pizzas, the gourmet pizza. They all are there for you. They're all delicious. Pick your favorite. Find out which one is, go through all of them if you need to find out which ones are your favorites, and get those Luigi's victory pizzas fired up this week, because the Packers came up with a victory. Hopefully can get another one next week against Arizona as well. Also, our Habish Rotier injury report from this game. LVN leaves with a foot injury. Dontavian Wicks leaves with an ankle injury. Javon Bullard leaves with at least was being evaluated for a concussion. I don't know if we ever got confirmation that he actually had a concussion or not, but as far as I could tell, he did not return to the game. The big issue there for Javon Bullard is that would be his second concussion. Remember, he had one in week 3 already. That's a short period of time to have a couple concussions. So hopefully he's okay. But LVN foot injury, he did get carted off, did not return to the game. Dontavian Wicks, I don't recall him returning to the game with the ankle injury either. And then again, Javon Bullard with a concussion. We're going to have to keep an eye on all 3 of those injuries this week as Green Bay does get set for Arizona. Now, Habish has 13 office locations conveniently located throughout the state of Wisconsin, including 7 minutes from Lambeau Field and 5 minutes from Camp Randall Stadium. When you call Habish, you'll get a lawyer directly. Super simple. Their number is 800-242-2874 or 800-2HABISH. You can also visit their website at habish.com. Habish Rotier, national reputation, hometown service. Do yourself a favor. Again, check them out over at habish.com. My play of the game in this one was the one moment where it did feel like, okay, this could get a little bit unnerving if Green Bay doesn't have the ability to get some points on that real true final offensive drive. And it was a 3rd down situation, and Jordan Love rolls left and hits Matthew Golden on that deep crosser. That was the big one, right? Because if you don't hit that, you're punting the ball away with about 2.5 minutes left, somewhere in that range, and you're only up by 6. And that's where it gets a little bit antsy. You still have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the other side. That would have been where you start feeling like, oh, the game actually is in the balance. And instead, Love hits Golden. They don't do much with it from there, but it gets them into field goal range. Havrisik hits the field goal. You go up by 9, and it was basically all over at that point in time. It was going to take an onside kick recovery in order to win. And right now, those, I never put anything past the Packers special teams, but those are exceedingly tough to come by. They couldn't even, get the first part of it where they needed to get the field goal, then the onside kick, and then a touchdown. And of course, they missed the field goal at the end. So that was basically over at that point in time, but that was a monster monster play from Love to Golden to pick up that first down and make it so that you didn't have to have those nervy moments where Cincinnati would have had a chance to win that game on that final drive. And thankfully, they basically put it on ice right then and there. So awesome play from Jordan, awesome play from Matthew Golden. That to me was the play of the game. All right, let's look at this closer offensively. From a Jordan Love standpoint, some good and bad, right? The interception was one of those that you felt like he's been better at throwing the ball away and not putting the ball in harm's way in that situation. It's a really bad decision there. Almost every other play so far for Jordan, even the interceptions, like I could at least see what he's thinking, why he made that decision. This one was a 0.0% chance of anything good happening when he made that throw. I did think he was a bit unlucky. If you would have probably looked at the expected outcome when it left his hand, I would have probably said incomplete. There was 0% chance of success. So let's get that out of the way. Like, bad decision, no matter what. Only bad things could have happened with that throw, but it's getting batted. And the ball, unfortunately, tips up in the air. And then, unfortunately, Geno Stone is standing right there ready to pick it off. So a little bit unlucky that was the exact scenario that happened, but no question about it. Horrible decision, and certainly a turnover-worthy decision, even if the likely outcome probably would have been more of an incomplete pass. But just one of those where you have to throw the ball away. You have to take the points in that situation, live to see another down. And this is why the offensive line play is so important, because really when Jordan is in the pocket and he's making sound decisions in that situation, right? When he's got a clean pocket and vision down the field, we've seen him be basically perfect. I mean, he's been awesome in those situations. It's when things kind of break down and he gets outside of the pocket. Now he has the ability to make some big plays, like the Golden play we just talked about, right? He rolls left, throws across his body, hits Golden for the play of the day. But he also has to understand when that opportunity isn't there, it's okay to get rid of the ball. This is one that Jordan definitely has to get out of his system and make sure that that's not happening, because those are, potential big swings in big games can happen in exactly those type of moments. It didn't hurt them in this one. It didn't cost them anything other than 3 points on the board, but still a decision that you don't want to see Jordan make. Outside of that, he had a pretty bad overthrow to Luke Musgrave, who was open in the middle of the field. And then besides that, he was fantastic. And Matt LaFleur kind of echoed those sentiments in his post-game press conference. On top of that, I thought his mobility in this one was really important, picking up multiple first downs with his legs. I know on that last drive, he had the ability to pick up that first down, maybe if he would have ran for it instead of sliding. That's probably one where I'm willing to give Jordan the green light there to say, hey, it's game on the line. You convert this first down, it's over. You can maybe take some contact on that one. I think he was thinking two things. In general, his number one rule of thumb that you're coaching him on all the time is get down, do not take that hit. And even in that situation, you didn't really need him to pick up the first. His health his long-term health is far more important than that first down. So I don't hate the decision. I think the other thing is he was really making sure he stayed in bounds. So I think the one thing he didn't want to do was get tackled and go out of bounds. So not only did he not pick up the first, but he also he went out of bounds and then the clock stops. So I think part of his slide decision there was to make sure that the clock would keep running. I think if he could have that one back, I think he'd probably try to run for it. And again, I would probably say that's one where I'd give him the green light and say, hey, let's pick up that first down. I'm not being harsh on him for that decision. I don't think it's that big of a deal one way or the other. If that were a playoff game and he slid down there, I would say, hey, that you got to convert that. Or at least you have to try, right? Maybe you get tackled, maybe you're short, but you have to try. But we have seen him put his shoulder down already and take some contact. And I just think that's an effort of him trying to be smart in the moment. And again, also try to keep the clock running. But outside of that, I thought his running was fantastic. Hit some big throws, the Golden ball down the field, which was right after that incompletion to Musgrave. So he overthrows Musgrave and then comes back the next play and absolute dime on the deep ball to Matthew Golden. And then again, the deep crosser on Matthew to end the game. Again, picking up first downs with his legs, knowing where to go with the football. I thought he was really outstanding outside of, again, poor decision early and a overthrow to Luke Musgrave. Those were really the two bad ones. Other than that, I thought he had a really nice day overall. Josh Jacobs, we talked about, player of the game. 150 yards on 23 touches and 2 touchdowns. He was fantastic. Matthew Golden, 3 big catches. And I mean, all 3 of them were impressive, right? So he's got the one short one where he just immediately accelerates after the catch, makes somebody miss in the open field. If you remember, there was a play in training camp that got pretty buzzed, by everyone that was attending, where he took a play almost exactly the same. And then in the training camp one, made 2 people miss after the catch on almost an identical move that he made. And everyone was talking about his quick acceleration and his ability to make people miss. That was almost a carbon copy of what we saw in training camp. You guys got to see it on this one in the game, but he has those super quick, sudden movements, and then he gets that acceleration going, and it's really fun to watch. So that one was awesome. Of course, the deep ball down the field where he's, again, Jordan dime, to him down the sidelines, but he makes sure he gets that catch both feet in bounds. And then, of course, the deep crosser at the end to kind of put the game away. And then he had 2 rushes. So he actually had over 100 yards on the day. Just it was split between rushing and receiving, but really, really nice day from Matthew Golden. And then offensive line, I thought early on struggled a little bit more. And you could kind of see that. And I think it was kind of indicative of early in the game, they couldn't get much going from a point production standpoint. I thought the offensive line was a lot to do with that. And I thought the second half, they were much better, which is why you saw them have much better efficiency in the second half. I thought early on, Zach Tom was maybe working out a little bit of the rust. I'm going to be excited to see what that kind of looks like on the All-22, along with the rest of the offensive line this week. But I thought early on, he had the play where they were running to the outside and it looked like he could not, set the edge or basically make Asai not be able to set the edge on that play. Couldn't seal it. So there was that. And then there was another play where there was an immediate pressure too. So I thought Tom struggled a little bit early. It seemed like he got better as the game went along. Again, probably just working off a little bit of rust from some missed time. Probably helped too that Trey Hendrickson wasn't in the second half and left with an injury. That probably had a piece to do with it as well, as far as the overall offensive line play. And then, of course, the big news here, too, is that they were mostly healthy, right? Rasheed Walker, Zach Tom, Aaron Banks all played, but also the rotation between Sean Ryan and Jordan Morgan, with Jordan Morgan starting and playing the majority of the snaps. It does seem like that is more up for grabs. And it seems like almost Jordan Morgan has jumped over Sean Ryan, but Ryan is still getting some snaps. Not great for Ryan, who's in a contract year, but I thought Morgan looked good at first glance, and you really love that touchdown run where Josh Jacobs was able to go right up the middle for 20 plus yards for the touchdown. So yeah, I thought some better stuff as the game went along, but that's one where I'm going to have to kind of look at the All-22 a little bit more, but certainly noteworthy that Jordan Morgan has seemingly surpassed Sean Ryan for the primary right guard spot at this time. Hey, Packers fans, it's time to get our sleeper picks in for Monday Night Football in Week 6. Bears, Commanders. This should be a fun one. We get to hate watch the Bears and hope they lose and everything like that, which should be really, really fun. But I'm going very quarterback heavy in this one. I'm going Caleb Williams, fewer than 230.5 passing yards, but more than 24.5 rushing yards. I think he's going to scramble a lot in this game. I think he's going to get to those rushing yards, but I think he'll fall short on the passing yards. Meanwhile, Jaden Daniels, the exact opposite. I expect him to be able to throw the ball in this one for more than 215.5 passing yards. Meanwhile, I think the Bears will really try to basically keep him in the pocket and make sure he cannot win with his legs. So I'm going fewer than 43.5 rushing yards. There's a lot of reasons I love sleeper, but look at this one. You can see the contest here, a $5 entry with the opportunity to win $66.23. I'm using one of their profit boosts, which they are awesome at doing, providing you with these extra bonuses and promotions, which makes it really, really fun and it enhances your opportunities when it comes to winnings. Also, right now, but you can get a 100% match on Sleeper by utilizing code PACKADAY up to $100. Again, a 100% match up to $100 by utilizing code PACKADAY. And you can get a free $20 entry, and you don't even need to make a deposit on it. So a free $20 entry with no deposit necessary. A ton of awesome promos over on Sleeper. Make sure you're checking it out. Terms and conditions apply. You can find those on Sleeper, available in over 25 states. Check it out. What the heck are you waiting for? Defensively, we talked about lack of turnovers and negative plays. That to me is the big. When I say negative plays, again, I'm saying like you've got to get some sacks, you've got to get some tackles for loss, you've got to get some forced fumbles, some fumble recoveries, interceptions. Those explosive plays for your defense just haven't been happening enough. You had 5 tackles for loss in this game and 1 sack, and that was it. That's not enough. The 5 tackles for loss isn't terrible. That's a pretty decent number overall. But in general, no picks, no forced fumbles, no fumble recoveries, 1 sack, 5 tackles for loss. I would have expected much better from this Packers defense. And again, when you're not generating those negative plays for the offense, it just makes it really, really difficult. I think you saw that kind of take its toll in this game. I also think that Jeff Hafley and this defense is going to have to go back to the drawing board a little bit, because you can tell right now teams have kind of figured out that the weakness / flaw in this defense is the quick passing game. Like, hey, do not let this defensive line get going. The corners can be beat pretty quick on some of these quick passing concepts. They're playing not to give up big explosive plays. So take your 3, 5, 7-yard completions and you're, just kind of matriculate your way down the field. It's always the constant battle of you have to allow something, right? You can't stop everything. So what do you want to make sure you're not allowing explosives. You want to make sure you're trying to get pressure to the quarterback, and you want to make sure you're not getting attacked too much in the middle of the field. So, some of the short and intermediate passing to the outsides, especially when you have a Jamar Chase and T. Higgins or a George Pickens, that stuff's kind of going to be there. And sometimes you have to tip your cap a little bit to the opposition and say, hey, yeah, that's what we're kind of willing to give you. And if you can kind of consistently do it over and over, we'll tip our cap to you and say, well done. But I do think there has to be a little bit more of a balance there, because again, it's been pretty apparent, especially with Dallas. And then again, this week as well, that teams that can get the ball into their hands pretty quick and get the ball in the hands of their playmakers, there's an opportunity there. It doesn't work as well where we saw Washington and Detroit, who kind of went more of like a drop back passing game and then took the checkdowns. That didn't work as well. Green Bay was allowing some of that, but it wasn't an issue. And because they were dropping back, it gave you more time to get to the quarterback. But this kind of 3-5 step dropping out has been a bit more of an issue. I don't know if it's, maybe being a little bit more aggressive with those corners, but then you're sometimes more susceptible to deeper throws, out and ups, and those sort of things. So it's always a double-edged sword. But right now, that seems to be the Packers' weakness defensively, and they've got to kind of figure out a way to counter that a little bit, or at least keep teams honest, where maybe you have a couple plays here and there where you say, hey, Carrington Valentine, Keyshawn Nixon, Nate Hobbs, I want you to jump this one. And if we give up a double move, we're going to have Xavier or Evan over the top, and we're going to make sure we try to limit that play. But I just think to kind of strike the fear a little bit and say, hey, you might be able to get away with this a few times, but at some point we're going to jump one of these and take it to the house if you keep throwing these quick passes. So I think there just has to be a little bit of an adjustment there from Jeff Hafley, because again, that's been the biggest weakness at first glance. And again, on the rewatch, I didn't think Keyshawn Nixon had a great game in this one. I want to go back and watch the corners on the all-22. It's not an easy day at the office when Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are across from you. It certainly makes it really difficult. I thought Jamar Chase was phenomenal. I thought he came up with some really clutch and big catches. And again, sometimes you just have to tip your cap as well. But I didn't think Nixon had a great game at first glance. But again, we'll take a look at it on all 22 and see if it hopefully looks a little bit better than maybe it looked like at the onset. The other big thing here for the defense that we need to talk about is second half defense. It's been a bit of an issue. It's been more than a bit of an issue. In the Lions game, the Lions scored 10 of their 13 points in the second half. The Commanders scored 15 of their 18 points in the second half. The Browns scored all 13 of their points in the second half. The Cowboys scored 24 of their 38, not counting the 2-point conversion for the defense here. 24 of their 38 in the second half or in overtime. And the Bengals scored all 18 of their points in the second half. So the Packers have allowed a total of only 20 points in the first half of 5 games, 4 points per game in the first half. That is unbelievable. That is incredible, amazing. You could not ask for anything better. That is an outstanding number. 20 points allowed in the first half. They've allowed 80 points in the second half and in overtime. A little bit of that is some garbage time stuff from Detroit and Washington as the game was basically over and out of hand, but the majority of it has mattered. And in fact, since the final 3 drives of the Cleveland game, all right, so final 3 drives of the Cleveland game, and then the second half against Dallas and the second half against the Bengals, this is what teams have done against the Packers defense. Field goal, touchdown, punt, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, missed field goal. Scoring on every drive save for 3, and that was a punt, save for 2, and that was a punt and a missed field goal. Scoring on every drive except 2, and that was 1 punt, the first drive that Dallas had in the second half, and a missed field goal at the end of this one, which probably should have been made. So their second half defense has been a real problem. And again, part of that is Green Bay's playing from the lead, and they're making the opposing teams go and put points on the board. Although Dallas wasn't exactly that way, but this is a bit of an issue. It seems like teams are getting a little bit more comfortable with what Jeff Hafley is doing in the second half of games and figuring out ways to counter it and pick it apart in the second half, or just some of the stuff that maybe is catching teams by surprise in the first half isn't in the second half. I can look you in the eye and say I don't have a perfect explanation as to why this is. I know it doesn't seem like it, but they are being aggressive on plays. They are bringing blitzes. They are, on that fourth down play to Jamar Chase, they're bringing pressure. That's why you get a Jamar Chase one-on-one on the outside. So it's not just going vanilla. They're still trying to, kind of confuse quarterbacks and things like that. It just hasn't really worked. So second half defense has been a major issue. I'll say it one more time. 80 points allowed in the second half this year, only 20 in the first half. And those last drives, again, second halves, starting with the last three drives in Cleveland, field goal, touchdown, punt, touchdown, 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 field goal, touchdown, missed field goal. Not been good enough. That has to be way, way better for the Packers if they want to be a top tier defensive team. And again, have the opportunity to maybe blow out an opponent like Cincinnati. They would have if they just played better defense in the second half, played like they did in the first half. Didn't work that way. Credit Cincy for making adjustments, but it's been now a bit of an issue through these last few games for Green Bay. From a special team standpoint, I thought Havrisik was fantastic. For somebody who just got picked up 24 hours before the game, they worked him out obviously earlier in the week. The scouting report is anything under 45 for Lucas is he's money on. Anything over 45, it's an issue. Well, they kept everything under 45 in this game. He went 5 for 5. That's still a big time performance and a very clutch kick at the end where, again, kind of like the golden play that we talked about, if Havrisik does not miss that or does not make that kick or misses it or gets it blocked or whatever, again, you're talking about a 6-point game with the Bengals having the ball. But he hits the kick. It's perfect. Credit to the protection. They have gone starters now on the field goal protection, as Justice has talked about pretty much in depth and in length. It's definitely helped. There was no pressure. Carl Brooks got really good pressure on a potential. It was an extra point. I think if maybe it had been a field goal, he would have had an opportunity to block it. But overall, much, much better from the field goal kicking unit, and huge hat tip to Lucas Havrisik for coming in on very short notice and going 5 for 5 on a day where with no McManus and you only win by 9, every point mattered, even one missed extra point there. And, they have a potential final drive opportunity, right? To just go for the touchdown on that final drive, try to get a 2-point conversion. So huge game from him, and all the kudos in the world for coming in on short notice. He's not worked with Daniel Whelan, not worked with Matt Orzik much, and he comes in and drills all 5 kicks. So huge performance from him. Special teams did have 2 penalties, a hold on Bo Melton, and then there was the personal foul on Tyron Hopper. I thought both of those were a little bit ticky-tacky, but it is what it is. That is still a bit of a problem, is some of the penalties on special teams. I thought the returns were solid. I thought especially Savon Williams and Bo Melton had good kick returns. I thought that was better. And I kind of do like the Savion and Bo Melton kick return group. And I kind of like the Romeo Doubs punt returner. It feels right now, maybe this changes if something goes wrong at some point. It feels like he has a good feel for the decision-making back there. He's catching everything really clean. And it looks like he has, a little bit of ability to kind of make that first guy miss and get upfield a little bit. I didn't like the one where he paused for 2 seconds at it was a low line drive punt. And it felt like, hey, just get yards. And instead he just kind of stood there, kind of surveyed I didn't like that as much. But outside of that, I did feel better with Romeo Doubs back there. Obviously the first one from Matthew where he did, again, that was an issue, fair catching it where he did. It ended up being a holding penalty anyway. I think that was the Melton hold, but that he had all day in the world there to return that, fair caught it. It just didn't make any sense in that situation. So I do feel like Romeo Doubs is the better option as the punt returner at this point. And surprisingly, looks better than I maybe would have expected Doubs to look as a punt returner. The other thing I will say about Havrisik really quick, they did have 2 kickoffs go into the end zone, which allowed them to kneel it down for the touchback, which brought it out to the 35. My guess is probably not what you wanted in that situation. You want those to have to be returned so you can hopefully pin them a little bit further back. So that was maybe a little bit of an issue for Havrisik, but not going to nitpick that too much when he goes 5 for 5 on very short notice. And again, to me, was one of the players of the day based on his overall kicking performance. Some miscellaneous notes from this one. Brandon McManus, Kamal Haddon, Anthony Belton, and Devontae Wyatt were your 4 inactives. Remember, they still have an open roster spot, so only 4 inactives were needed. Kamal Haddon was the only healthy scratch in this one. Every other healthy player played in the game, or at least was active for the game. Penalties, not as much of an issue. They did have 5 penalties for 40 yards. But that's a much better overall result. I didn't think Green Bay, kind of shot themselves in the foot. Didn't have the pre-snap penalties. Did have Micah go offsides for one. Not sure why Cincinnati didn't get the free play on that one. That was a little bit odd, but thankfully they didn't. And just a 5-yard penalty for Micah on that play. But that is something he has to get a little bit better at. I want to say that's probably like his 4th, 5th, 6th, neutral zone infraction or offsides penalty so far. It is something that I noted in my scouting report when I watched all the snaps in Dallas is he does have those. Usually he causes some from the offensive tackle and it evens itself out a little bit, but something he can definitely improve upon a little bit there. By the way, even though I know that the stats aren't there for Mike, I still thought he was extremely disruptive. And yes, he is getting held on plays. Green Bay is getting away with some of that as well. They're not seemingly calling as much holding, which I'm not necessarily super frustrated by from an NFL standpoint overall. But when it's egregious, where there's the one play where Micah just gets tackled on the play, yeah, you would like to see a flag thrown in that situation. It wasn't. Again, I still think Micah's playing extremely good football. Would you like to maybe see a few more disruptive, like sacks and things like that? Yes. But again, these quarterbacks against Green Bay right now are getting the ball out of their hands at warp speed to make sure that Micah and company cannot wreck shop. And that's, again, I think one of the big reasons why you're not seeing more sacks. And specifically for Micah Parsons, he's also getting a ton of double teams, triple teams, etc. He's playing great, though. I thought he was really good in this one as well. Where the Packers stand now, through 5 games for them, 6 weeks in the NFL. They currently have the 5th best record in the NFL, and they have the 3rd best odds to win the Super Bowl and the best odds to win the NFC by a pretty decent margin, actually. Now, that doesn't mean anything. You're not raising any banners for, hey, best odds to win the NFC week 6, 2025. Raise them. We know it means nothing. And I'll regurgitate what I posted on Twitter to kind of end the night on Sunday. This is the team that is the 5th best record in the NFL. They have the 3rd best odds to win the Super Bowl. They have the best odds to win the NFC. And they're not good enough right now. I think that's clear. I think it's fair to say that. If they had to go into the playoffs right now and face the league's best of the best for 4 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it would end up being. Right now, they're the number 2 seed in the NFC. So it'd be 4 weeks, wild card, divisional, championship game, and Super Bowl. I wouldn't feel super confident that they could get through that 4 weeks and go undefeated and win a Super Bowl. That's where I feel like things are at right now. I don't think that's a hot take. I think most of you would agree. In fact, I think most of you are far more angry and upset and have maybe some pitchforks ready and everything like that. This isn't the Super Bowl right now. And I don't want this team to be playing their best football in October. I need them to play their best football in December and January and February. And I know we need to have immediate reactions. And I know we have to have immediate hot takes, and it's not good enough. And it's only a 9-point victory. As I've talked about, this is all a process. This is all a journey. If they play this way in January and February, we'll just say January, it will not be good enough. And we will all have our opportunity to criticize and critique and pick apart what went wrong. True story. Right now, they are 3-1-1 with the 5th best record in the NFL. Everything is not terrible. Everything is not awful. And I tell you one more time, if the turnovers start coming, and as maybe stupid as this sounds, turnover luck is a real thing. Sometimes the ball is just not bouncing your way. Like, they are punching at the ball, swiping at, they're doing everything to get that ball out, and the ball is just not going on the ground right now. It sucks. And like even Jordan's pick today, that thing ricochets, bounces up, and of course, Geno Stone is right there. There's another one for Joe Flacco that ricochets, bounces up, and there's not a player there for Green Bay. It's a true story that these things tend to come in bunches, and right now they're not coming at all for the Packers. I really, truly believe if you start seeing some of those things, and I do think Green Bay is doing a lot of good things to make those happen. Pressure plus, punching out the ball and swiping at the ball and getting hands on it is usually a good way to do that. And they're getting a lot of pressure. and they're punching at a lot of balls and trying to swipe it out. And it just hasn't happened so far. If that starts happening, you're going to see a much different brand of football from Green Bay. You're going to see things become so much easier for Green Bay. If you are losing the turnover battle and just not generating turnovers, you are playing on the hardest mode possible. You're playing with the odds stacked against you. So that's what really has to change, as we talked about at the beginning. But this is still a team, despite all of that, that is the 5th best record in the NFL and is still winning, well, at least this week. I know they're 1-1-1 in their last 3. So again, it's not anything to write home about right now, but they're still in a really good spot right now through the first 6 weeks of the season. Let's see where this heads. They will need to get better. There's no question about it. This is not a good enough brand of football overall to win you the games that you want in January. True story. I would, if you're really upset right now, this is just, if they're not good enough, whatever, I would honestly urge you to go back, watch the condensed version over on NFL.com or rewatch the game, do whatever you need to do. I swear to you, it's nowhere near as bad as you're thinking that it was. It just isn't. You know, Jamar Chase comes up with some really big plays on the outside. It's a really good football player. Jordan makes a boneheaded decision early on to take some points off the board. It's a frustrating play. I thought the offense moved the ball very well all day on Cincinnati. Would have liked a little bit more point production. Thought the defense didn't hold up as well as I would have liked. That's a 17 play drive, 17 play, 78-yard drive to open the second half. And they have to convert a 4th down play at the end for a touchdown to get that to work. Again, 4th down play to Jamar Chase on the other one too. You're this close. You're this close to that being a complete blowout. Just wasn't. It's okay. It's okay. Needs to be better. We can say that. It's a fair statement to make, but it's nowhere near as bad as I think some of you are thinking this is. I'll just put it that way. I do think that there has to be a little bit of a better and different way to do this than just like they won the game, they lost the style point. That's not a real thing. That's not a real thing. And if you want to know why it's not a real thing, Detroit's a great example right now. Detroit absolutely crushed the Cincinnati Bengals. It didn't help them against KC, didn't help them against Green Bay. They've played 2 good teams. They're 0-2 in those games, but they looked really good against some bad teams. Awesome. Cool style points. And I hear everyone, I want him to be more like Dan Campbell. Oh, yeah, you beat Dan Campbell earlier this year, has a better record than Dan Campbell right now. Dan Campbell hasn't done anything in the playoffs. Just saying. We all want it to be better. You do. I do. The Packers do. Matt LaFleur does. Everyone wants it to be better. I cannot stress that this is still very early in the season. You don't need to be playing your best football yet. We have a long time to judge this thing in the long term. And nobody in the NFL right now, and I mean nobody in the NFL right now, is satisfied with where they're at through 6 weeks of the NFL season. Whatever eventual champion it is, whether it's the Bills or the Packers or the Chiefs or the Lions or whomever, Eagles, is going to have to play much better football than they're playing right now. All of them. There's nobody you can compare to any. Tampa's playing really good football. They need to play better defensively than what they're doing right now if they want to win a Super Bowl. Philly's a little bit of a mess right now. KC's got 3 losses on the season already. They need to play better. They played a great game against Detroit. Detroit defensively is really beat up. San Francisco's playing well. Their Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, the injuries just continue to completely obliterate that team. It's very much going to catch up with them very, very soon. So the Rams, again, not super impressive in a 17-3 win against the Ravens. Whatever eventual champion gets to that finish line is nowhere near that level right here and right now. Nowhere near it. No matter what team you want to say. Bills just lost to New England last week at home in Buffalo. So pick whatever team you want. I know it always feels like everyone else is doing stuff better and just isn't. It's not reality. It's not the truth. So wish Green Bay would have played a little bit better in this one. Not as bad as you thought. Didn't get the style points. Got the win. Still won by 2 scores. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Around the rest of the end, well, first of all, let's talk about Packers Cardinals. 6.5 point favorites on the road in Arizona next week. So Packers open as pretty heavy favorites, especially for being on the road. Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. both did. Well, Murray didn't play in this game. Harrison Jr. left with a concussion. So both of those are going to be worth monitoring this week. Murray seemed like he was close to play, so I would assume that he will play this upcoming week, but that's obviously one to monitor quite a bit. And then again, Marvin Harrison Jr. left with a concussion. Again, hopefully they're both able to go. You always want to see the teams at their best, but those will definitely be two injuries to monitor this week. For Green Bay, Devontae Wyatt, Christian Watson, Brandon McManus, Anthony Belton, LVN, Javon Bullard, Dontavian Wicks, Jacob Monk, all either did not play or got injured in this game. Those are all injuries to keep an eye on for the Packers this week. And then do Marshawn Lloyd, Colin Oliver, or Brenton Cox make any progress where they can actually start practicing this week, either off of PUP or IR? This would be the first week that Brenton Cox is eligible to come off of injured reserve. So keep an eye out for that one this week. If he's available, again, Colin Oliver and Marshawn Lloyd would be great if they could start practicing as well. We'll have to keep an eye on practice coming up this week to see if any of those things happen. Around the rest of the NFL, we've got Bears, Commanders, Monday Night Football. We technically have Falcons, Bills as well, but probably the one we're keeping a closer eye on from an NFC standpoint, an NFC North standpoint, is Commanders, Bears. Cowboys lost to the Panthers. Cowboys defense still looks really, really bad. Seahawks go into Jacksonville, get a big win in Jacksonville. I thought that was a huge win for Seattle. Buccaneers look awesome, beating the 49ers in that game. And then Chiefs beat the Lions, like we talked about as well. Big game next week already, Monday Night Football. Lions at Buccaneers, Lions Buccaneers in Detroit, actually, I should say. Lions Buccaneers in Detroit. Lions open at 5.5 point favorites in that game, which I was pretty surprised about. That's a pretty aggressive line for Detroit, considering how well Tampa's played so far. But that's a big one in the NFC coming up in week 7. No other final thoughts other than, again, kind of what we talked about already. I think Green Bay is in a fine spot. I want to see them start playing better, obviously. Hopefully that starts this week against Arizona. And then they've got the big game with Pittsburgh and Aaron Rodgers on Sunday Night Football the following week. Should be a couple fun weeks coming up. Both games on the road, though. Green Bay not good on the road so far. 0-1-1, 3-0 at home. We'll see how they handle Arizona. And then, of course, Pittsburgh the week after that. Couple just programming notes. No Pack-A-Day Live with Mike Wall today on Monday. That will take place on Tuesday. So noon on Tuesday will be Pack-A-Day Live with Mike Wall. Members Q&A will be on Thursday this week. As of right now, that's when I have that scheduled for. As of the moment, it could be card subject to change, as they would say in wrestling. But as of right now, member Q&A will be on Thursday, and then happy hour 3 p.m. on Friday. I will be back for live pre and post game shows on Sunday as well. Huge shout out to Camille Davis, Dan Kotnick, and Ross Uglum for doing pre and post game shows so I could attend the game in person. Appreciate that a ton. They killed it, of course. Always make sure to check those out when you get the chance. Even if I'm not doing it, always got people taking my place, and they always do such an incredible job. So again, shout out to Camille, Dan, and Ross for that. Also, huge shout out to the Milwaukee Brewers picking up a big win in the divisional series. Now it's on to the Dodgers and the NLCS. Go shock the world. Hopefully they can get a big win in game 1 and find a way to win that series and go to a World Series, which would have me freaking the heck out. So going to be watching that one very closely, and best of luck to them. Shout out to our All-Pro and Hall of Fame members, PJ Wynn, John Wild, Brandon Paletta, Boom Handle, Donald Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, David McCluskey, Donald Decker, Alex Wong, Peter Rataka, Jay Zimmerman, B. Brown, Puerto Rican Packer, Dan Gassford, SoCal Pack, Chris Rager, Izzy Roberts, Ian Ewing, Carlo Delgado, Willie Winkle-Stinkle, Jen Wright, The Gable Storm, Pack Attack Cast, Chris Weish, Craig, John D. Metropolis, Hayden Radomski, Devin Lane, Ganzusa, Alexander Newell, Dan Miller, Bill Reinhart, Richard Morales, and Les Nino. I'll see you guys soon, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.